old gods have always been at the heart of World of Warcraft. One by one we have encountered them, and for the time being put a stop to their dark plans. But with all the hints laid throughout Dragonflight, the time for their resurgence may already be upon us. In this video, I will attempt to explain the nature of these eldritch beings and their Void Lord Masters. This should give us some insight into their future plans. However, it should be noted that some of this is speculation based on the evidence we have been provided. So take from this what you will, and ultimately decide for yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and come, take a seat by the fire. Before we delve into each individual old god, let us start off by exploring what we know of their origins. While it is hard to conceive of something more terrifying than these beings, we know that they had, at least at some point, masters, named the Void Lords. I should make this distinction now. I will be referring to their domain as Shadow, as shown on the cosmology, not the Void. The true Void is what lies outside the cosmology altogether, true nothingness. They are the Lords of Shadow in truth, but the Void title does make sense when used in opposition to the light, as we will find out later. These beings are the pantheon of Shadow. They embody the extremes of this cosmic influence. But as hard as it is now to imagine, they do have a purpose within the great balance. While their intentions are unknowable, at least some of them do want to manifest themselves within our physical universe. It would be safe to assume all of them would want to at the very least increase their influence over it. They have already breached our universe as far as we know. That is Dimensius, the all-devouring, that manifested at the homeworld of the Ethereals, Karesh. He has since been described as nothing but a mere echo of the power of the true Void Lord. The attack that ensued was most likely a way to restore itself to a more corporeal form, whether that was from feeding on the planet's inhabitants' souls, or perhaps a world soul within the planet itself. Not all of the Void Lords seek the same goal, however. Each one will likely have their own motivations and desires. The same way the old gods do not seem to all align on the same goals either. Each old god had a particular power set, with a few parts that seem to relate to the domain of Shadow as a whole. It is our belief that the old gods are manifestations of one of these lords' powers. So this brings us right back to there being a purpose in the universe for this Shadow. This, we believe, is actually tied to the psychological concept of the Shadow Self, or the unconscious mind. The universe is given form and shape from the light and the shadow respectively, but they are also the embodiment of conscious states. To explain this, the light would be the ego self. It believes it is always right, and follows what it believes is the one true path. With this belief, it creates a feeling of comfort, of hope. The same feelings experienced by wielders of the light when using their magic. However, it has a tendency to lead towards tyranny, as we saw with Iril on Draenor, or Zira with Illidan. Believing you are always on the correct path leaves you unable to change. You cannot see the flaws to correct them. This disentropic state would lead to stagnation, a static universe. Nothing would ever change, nothing could ever grow. The shadow is the antithesis to this. They are the shadow self, the dark recesses of the conscious mind, often hidden from sight. They see infinite possibilities, many truths all at once. Using their magic invokes a sense of dread, fear, or despair. They are the survival instincts, those moments where you need to assess the possible negative implications of what you are doing. This road of endless paths is a natural psychological entropy, and it is key for life to flourish. It is only that in its extreme form it has a tendency to lead towards pure anarchy. But many of those who wield its power in small amounts show a great tendency for free will, self-determinism, and empowerment, while those who use too much tend to go completely crazy, becoming hollow shells ripe for manipulation. The old gods, then, are the twisted eldritch spawn of these Void Lords. We believe that the Void Lords, in an attempt to gain control of the world's souls, slumbering out in the great dark, cast vast swaths of shadow magic. These shadow spores would land on as many planets as possible, corrupting the nascent life already on the planet, rather than the abominations themselves just dropping out of the sky. This is how the old gods display abilities well beyond what would be considered normal for a being of pure shadow. N'Zoth originally being some form of a kraken, S'thun being a sandworm or Jormungwa origins, and Yasharaj being a hydra or mandragora, given his multiple heads, and lastly, Yogg-Saron would have been some kind of plant, since thorns appear to grow in areas influenced by his corruption. So then, let us look at what each of these old gods represent when we view them through the psychological theory we propose. This leads us right to the ancient ruins of Ahn'Qiraj, where we have S'thun, the first old god that we ever fight. He would represent doubt. He is the instinctual what if. When analysing a new situation, it can be healthy to doubt, to make sure we double check. But to continue to doubt can erode your mind. This lines up well with his quotes, where he reinforces doubts you are already having, like your friends abandoning you, or that your courage may fail. Then we look at Yogg-Saron, the so-called god of death. He would represent the liar, the mask you put on to the outside world, the great deceiver. A lie in the right hands can be helpful, even necessary sometimes. But when this psychological trait gets pushed to the extreme, it becomes manipulative. It was his lies, after all, that allowed him to corrupt the mind of Loken, causing a civil war to erupt within the Titan Forged and considerably weakening their position. He has manipulated events so far-reaching that we cannot mention it all here, but it is the current theory that it is his lies, or at least his promises of power, that is the one spurring on the Drust. Yasharaj needs no introduction. the seven-headed god of terrible and ancient power. He is the embodiment of negativity. The Klaxi describe him as having the ability to turn hope into despair, inhaling your courage to breathe out fear. He is the darkness within. He cannot be pushed away. He must be confronted, or it will corrupt everything it comes into contact with. Lastly, we have N'Zoth, the Deep One, representing perception. Viewing yourself as slightly too weak can cause you to get motivated to be strong. But the extreme of this is a completely warped, almost waking nightmare view that can destroy any sense of self. His ability to tear through the fabric of reality, to reveal a distorted perspective on the world, like we saw in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms or Uldum, is a result of this power. Obviously, there are no hard lines drawn. Some overlap will absolutely occur, being that we were told the old gods were formed from the Void Lord's combined powers. But it is interesting to see these amorphous horrors as necessary evils, a part of the universe just like anything else. Just be careful not to embrace them too much, or you may find yourself becoming a little faceless. But if it really was masses of shadow magic or energy sent out into the universe to corrupt life rather than the old gods themselves, it does explain why even when the body is destroyed, its corruption still lingers. Yasharaj was killed in what would become Pandaria, and it was only when the manifestations of his very power were confronted and defeated did it truly begin to dissipate. It no longer had a body to corrupt, or the ability to feed on the world's soul to replenish itself. However, one point we have yet to mention is the effect of this shadow on Azeroth. If I were a slumbering world soul, considering everything that has happened in recent times, I would be far more open to focusing on the more negative, unconscious side. I was bitten and fed upon by shadowy parasites, chained and ordered to someone else's vision of what I should be, stabbed by a giant sword, and almost used by death as fuel for a device to remake creation. The possibilities of a dark Azeroth would not seem so extreme after all that, and it would be so interesting to see the corruption taking hold of our world and the implications for all of us, as well as the attempts to bring balance and cleanse said corruption. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with these speculations? Or do you have a great theory of your own to share? Oh, and don't forget to come back anytime.